You are now live on Channel 8 and YouTube.
All right, thank you, Hannah. All right, so I'm going to call the meeting of the Capital Improvements Committee to order on this 22nd day of October, 2025, 4:30 p.m. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. So with that, we do have 4 members in the room, so we do have a quorum for this evening. For the review and approval of the prior meeting minutes. I'm hearing that we're going to defer these until the next meeting.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then we'll have both sets at that point.
Okay. All right. So coming up third on the agenda are our department presentations. There's nothing from Development Services or anything from Administration and Finance. So Chief Bennett, if you are ready to go, then.
I'm ready to go.
All right.
Okay, Justice, as you know, the first 2 were previous requests from last year that were not granted, or the money went elsewhere. So we'll start off with the vests. The vests, so we have 9 full-time officers, and as I've been telling the town since post came into play, that part-time officers were going by the wayside. So now we only have 2 part-time officers. So in talking to Mr. Ryan, it was determined that we should submit for all the officers at 1 year instead of breaking it up. Because we usually did full-timers because there was 10 1 year, and then the part-timers because there was 10 that year. And then so it wasn't such a big thing, but whereas there's only 13 of them now, he suggested that it all go together.
You said, but you said 9 and 2, which is 11,
That's what I said.
right? But you just said 13. So where'd the other 2 come from?
Oh, wait. No, I'm sorry. You're right. You're right. No, 13,000.
Oh, 13,000.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
You're right.
Okay.
You're right. 13,000. Sorry, it's 11 officers, 9 and 2.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Can you describe those vests? Are they 3As? Are they three A's or B's plus extras? What's?
Should be in your packet. You carry is black. And there doesn't say that, I believe they're 3As. They're the highest level that we get.
Okay.
We don't get a different level. We get the highest level you can get.
Right. So 3As, but you don't have any other, the additional bells and whistles. Like,
No, it's just the best in the carriers. Yep. Oh, wait, no, level 2. So the panels are level 2.
Okay.
They're right there.
no. Two. Okay, so you did, okay, so you've got the level 3A plus then the additional. The additional, okay, all right.
Yep.
And this 13,233, how current of a price is that?
As of less than 30 days ago.
Okay, awesome.
Yes.
October 4th.
And I realize I'm just asking about your questions. I'm sorry, Mr. Chair.
No, that's okay. So usually I'm pretty free flowing with it because then we can just get through the presentation well. So that's fine. If you have any questions, as long as people aren't talking over each other, that's fine. So then you can ask when it needs to.
In the past 30 days. And based on other conversations that have gone on recently, these are all contractually beyond the fact that I'm in full support of safety equipment and everything else.
Yep.
But I just want to make sure that if there's anything else in your presentation that's also contractually required, do we already have beyond the union requirements? Are there other contracts
So all right, the 11 vests we're getting, there's 10 full-time officers. Our newest officer just graduated from the academy, so her vest is going to be excluded from this. So it's 9 and then the 2 part-timers. So 9 vests are contractually obligated by the town.
Okay,
The 2 other vests are for the part-timers that we have left. And we just, as I explained, Mr. Ryan and I were talking, and he figured that it would just be better to roll it all in at once instead of putting it off to another year.
okay. And are any of the current vests, what are the expiration dates on the current vests? Are they all expiring? Have they all expired?
Yes,
Okay, and
except
so,
for that one.
except for that one, that new
Yes.
one, all right,
Yes,
and,
August something of this year,
Yeah.
okay,
August 1st.
all right,
Mhm.
and I'm sorry, I was just handed this, so do you have anything in here for the next 5 years? Have you done your 5-year plan, or is this just for this year?
Well, I wouldn't submit again for 5 years.
Well, so, and I'm being a bit of a stickler here, so please don't take it personally. I know in prior years that the capital improvements has basically functioned as a capital purchasing. The bylaw calls for a capital plan that goes out 5 years. So if we're buying these now, I would expect to see in year 5 a preparatory for purchasing these again. Am I making sense?
Yeah, you are.
Okay,
No,
so,
I didn't do it.
okay,
That, and I guess if I were to ask a question, I'd have to look back at prior years, but even if we're looking at a projected cost in year 5, how has the cost changed over the years? Because I can't think of that off the top of my head. I know this has come up a few times. I would imagine it would be,
It has increased. I don't believe it's increased all that much. I believe the previous vests were like either 1,000 or just under 1,100.
so we would be looking potentially in fiscal year 2031, so in about 5 fiscal years from now to also. Right, to also do this again.
Yeah.
Does that sound correct? Chief?
Yes.
Okay, so we'll mark that on the sheet here, so that way we can put that in, so.
percentage wise.
All right, is there any more questions that anybody has about the replacement vests? Anybody? No? All right, Chief, if you want to go to your next item.
Okay, next item was the radar trailer that was submitted last year. You'll notice the price has increased. I believe it went up. 87. About $700 from the previous bid. Last year it was 87,2850. And this year it has increased to 93,55. The town did receive insurance check for 37,57, which I would suspect went into general fund.
How old was that?
The previous trailer?
Yeah, the one that got the insurance check for.
If I had to guess, I'd probably say 3 years.
And
Right.
Chief,
So when we first got, the trailer was roughly $7,800 when I purchased the first one. And the second one was 8,700 and this one went up to almost 94.
And we only got 37.57 for the insurance.
Yes.
Chief, how long, how often do we need to get the rate? Excluding an accident like what happened, how long do we have to get, new radar trailers? How long is this expected to last for?
They could last for a lifetime.
Okay.
Is,
If I may, Mr. Chair, ask the question a little differently.
yes,
Is there an expectation in the next 5 or 6 years that we're going to have to replace it again?
I wouldn't suspect it unless it gets damaged.
Okay. The reason, I guess I need to say up front that the reasons for my questions is, we all know where the town is, financially speaking, right? And what I'm looking at personally, I can't speak for any other member of the board, is developing a true plan, a spend plan, a needs plan.
And I understand that.
Yeah.
But I'm not a fortune teller and I can't tell you if the
Right.
trailer is gonna get damaged 3 weeks from now or 6 years from now.
No, and I don't expect you
So
to.
that is a true plan, that
Right.
you have a trailer that is suspected to last almost a lifetime, 20 years, well past the 5 years you're even looking at.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they're kept, we generally take care of them. We have another trailer that sustained no damage. We have 3 radar signs that you've seen throughout town that have sustained no damage. So I would suspect that there's no way of telling when it could damage.
It's just with all of the different organizations that you belong to. I don't know if these kinds of conversations ever come up in any of those conversations that, hey, this is a typical thing, that happens all the time across municipalities, or is this just
It's very
Templeton's
unique.
bad luck?
Doesn't happen.
It's very unique. It's just as if you saw it just on the news the other day, a cruiser got rear-ended by drunk drivers.
Yeah.
It does happen. You can't forecast when it's gonna happen, but it could.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
So does anybody else have any other questions on the radar trailer?
No.
Okay. And Chief, if you want to go to your last project.
yes. No, I didn't do 5 years out on this. This is generally, it's every single year we ask for 1 cruiser. It is become standard practice for the town, that the town realizes that buying a cruiser every year reduces cost and service maintenance. Our service maintenance has gone down every single year since we've started this process. We looked at 2 vehicles this year. We looked at the Tahoe, which came in at 81,686. However, I chose the F1, the 1500 Silverado pickup truck that came in at 73,477. In the past, when we've done it, we started when it would get put in the capital, there was always an added 5% to the cost of the vehicle, because you never know what's gonna happen from the cost, the time you say yes to the time you purchase the vehicle. Adam Lamontagne changed that the previous year, and he had it at just at 10% above the vehicle cost. And it was right on the button. And that's why you'll see the extra 10% there for 80,825.
Chief, about how much have these been, I mean, I know that you look at multiple different vehicles, but how much has the cost of this gone up over the last several years? Because
I can tell you last year's vehicle was 80,000, I believe. Have it here. I believe it was 80,000 last year's vehicle, which was the Tahoe. And I actually 79,893. But like I said, this was before the 10% that he added.
Right.
Yeah.
So this year's vehicle is actually cheaper than last year's vehicle. Whenever we do purchase a vehicle, I always try to price out all the vehicles to see which ones are the cheapest that we can purchase for the town. In some cases, I can't always go with what's cheaper because of what we're replacing and what the need is. But considering our last vehicle was a Tahoe, I feel that we can do the 1,500. The F-150 that we purchased 3 years ago now, unfortunately got in another accident. Not the officer's fault, will be totally repaired, but that's been serving its purpose well, having the truck. So I figured the 1,500 would be good.
Has anyone ever had any conversations around? You mentioned the fact that, your maintenance costs have gone down, right? Which is specific to your department, but by not surplusing the vehicle, I don't know who or how decisions are made on surplusing vehicles, to be completely upfront, all right? All my perspective, and somebody can correct me and educate me otherwise. It's gone from, all right, great, it's no longer meets the needs of the police department, right? And that's your call, right? But if we turn around and give it to another department, right? I don't know how all that happens, because all that's ended up happening is we've transferred the maintenance costs out of the police department into another department. So to say that from a departmental perspective, I'd say you're spot on. Your maintenance costs, I believe what you're saying, but the towns haven't.
So I understand what you're saying. So obviously what happens is we keep X amount of cruisers in the fleet. Okay. My guys ask me to keep more. I tell them, no, we can't. So when we get the new car, we take the older car and we rotate it out. For us, what's been happening, and luckily for the town, is the town has been getting a better vehicle turned over to another department that has been kept up. And now that other department, emergency management, gets a vehicle that they can run now for about 1 to 2 years without any major maintenance having to be done to that vehicle. That's what we've been seeing over the last 3 years or so, since because we just started the whole process, moving the mechanical part of it away from the highway department over to Aikens. And I don't want to say anything about the town highway department, but where we have somebody that's dedicated to our vehicles, they've been kept up much better. Does that answer your question?
Partially.
So
yes.
what happens is that emergency management now gets a vehicle, they have it for 2 years, but we're always pumping out a vehicle every year that's better maintained. So when another department has it, or if emergency management starts to experience a vehicle or trouble with that vehicle, they can just take our other one and keep going.
Right.
There's no mechanism the meal tax helps with this, and there's no other mechanisms for any of the departments. And they are getting a better vehicle than they ever did before because of this rotation. He's correct.
The question, which is not a topic for the chief here, whether or not some of the other departments actually need it. I realize you're reusing stuff. I realize it's in the best of intentions and everything. I'm not criticizing that. I'm looking at it that we go from having a lower cost in police, to having maintenance in this particular example, emergency management that only has a $2,250 budget overall. And so, I'm looking at all, I'm new to this, so I'm probably asking a lot of stupid questions and making some stupid statements, but this is where I am. The idea of not surplusing that vehicle, right? Because my perspective is you surplus the vehicle out. There's no requirement. Emergency management has to have a vehicle. You surplus the vehicle out, you get some sort of, I don't know how much how much money the town would get back for that surplus, which then puts it into the ability to be able to do other things with it. Because whenever you move a vehicle from one department to another, there's usually a paint job involved, there may be signage involved, there may be other maintenance involved. And it's not, and this is not directed towards you, it's not transparent, right? And from a capital perspective, if emergency management needs a vehicle, they should be sitting in front of this committee saying, I need a vehicle. It's going to be more than $10,000. Yes, we can take one of the old police vehicles and repurpose it, but that's still, it's still there, and
I would just like to interrupt. I think that this conversation is, I mean, once, and Chief, you can correct me if I'm wrong, once a vehicle is decommissioned from your department, at that point, its ownership reverts back to the town and the town makes a decision on what it's going to
That's
do.
correct. I turn the vehicle over to the Board of Selectmen.
You turn over to the Board of
Yes.
Selectmen, right?
There are
And to the
no-
town administrator's office.
there are no records from out of
We
going
don't know how
back
that one.
for the select board to repurpose it. None.
Well,
So anyways, I realize we're getting off topic,
Okay.
but thank you
Yeah.
for your patience with me and my stupid questions.
Yeah.
Okay.
I believe what happens is the department head comes before the board and asks
That's what's
for what vehicle.
typical.
Yeah.
yes,
I
typical what happens. If you were to take another vehicle from like the light department, that board would have to vote for it to send it to, and another department would have to request it if they wanted between that. But for the select board and for the police department, that particular item would come in front of the select board by the department head. So it'd be something that probably Bob would present, or with the management, person that they wanted it. But yeah, it's correct. If they need a vehicle, they should be going through capital first, because to say, even if it's a new one or whatever, and then if there's one available, I mean,
Yeah.
that's what I.
But like I said, that's not your problem. That's not your area.
Yeah.
It's
Right.
just,
I'll answer whatever
Yeah.
question I can.
yeah.
Well, it's helpful to people.
It is
Mhm.
helpful. Okay.
Right.
Thank you for your patience
No,
with me.
It's no problem.
So I only have one thing. So because of a lot of what happened with capital last year we've already had your first item with the bulletproof vests. They were approved to go on, and then everything happened last year on the capital plan. Not on the capital plan in terms of the capital that went to town meeting.
Yeah.
So what I would request, it doesn't have to be immediate, just to make sure that we actually budget, because now that ARPA, you can't appropriate ARPA anymore, because I know that ARPA had to be used, and then in the past, we've been consistent with making sure things from the police department have made it to town meeting. I would just ask that, and it can be more of a rough estimate, for the next 4 more years, what are you sort of projecting out for what the costs could be for these vehicles? If we could get it before our meeting on 11/19, that would be good, just so that we can plug it
Absolutely.
in to say, hey,
So,
we should
okay.
be doing this,
all right,
if that's what the committee chooses to do.
yeah, I'll try to get a number as best I can.
Right.
I can't
Yeah,
figure out what it's gonna be. I think it's generally, but see, some of it all depends, like,
On-
the Tahoe went up so much because they had a body design change. So that increased the cost of the Tahoe. We knew that coming in. Because as you said, when I go to different things, the vendors will sit there and they'll tell us, hey, there's gonna be a body change, so we'll get that it's gonna be $6,000 to $7,000 more. But yeah, that's not a problem. Absolutely. By the 19th?
Yeah, by the 19th of November, because that's gonna be the first meeting that we start to pull together our capital plan. So if we get it before then, we can start to look at that, and we can just plug it in. And if there's any assumptions that you're making, like we assume in year 3, we're gonna be replacing another Tahoe or something else, you can put that down, but that doesn't hold you necessarily to the feet to the fire, because whatever happens as we go through, because capital plan, and again, this is up to the committee, should change and be updated over time. So whatever assumptions you're making into your projections, just let us know so that we can plug that in, so that we have awareness, and the next committee has awareness next year on what assumptions were made, so that there's no surprises if it ends up being different.
No problem.
Okay.
Not a problem.
All right. Does anyone else have any questions?
No.
No. Okay, with that, thank you, Chief Bennett, and, if we have any other questions, we will let you know.
Alrighty, thank you.
Thank you.
You have a good night.
You as well. All right, so. With that, that was the only department that we had for presentation and review. We are on to agenda item number 4. What you see in your packet is generally what, if you remember from our first meeting, I talked about, adding a section right up front, so that way we knew what was funded, what wasn't funded, what things have shifted around. Since I had sent this out, I had gotten some information back from some of the departments, so I actually have an updated copy of pages 3 and 4 of it for everybody for the record. So everything that I highlighted in pink is everything that shifted around on it.
Thank you. Thank you.
No problem. So I don't know if everyone's okay with the presentation of it. Is it clear enough so that future committees would understand what had happened? So that we understand what had happened, so we kind of know what our challenges are in terms of what we recommended versus what actually ended up being funded. Does anyone have any suggestions? I think this should be in place in the report. I did attach the table of contents to it as well, so that people could have an idea. Again, the purpose of bringing it up was that, you know, we seem to work year from year, ignoring what wasn't completed in the prior year. And this is just sort of a way for the committee to force the committee to stop and take a look back and say, we need to update this section before we do anything else, because what actually did the town do? Because once things progress past the committee, it's up to the selectmen to bring that onto the town warrant in conjunction with the town administrator, and then the townspeople end up voting on it. And then there's never any reflection back on the committee to say, hey, we made these recommendations. What actually went to town meeting, what didn't go to town meeting? And does the committee still believe in support what it had voted on for the prior year's capital plan, and how we want to change it or not change it moving? Does anyone have any comments, concerns?
And this is probably just me. The layout,
Mhm.
and there may be a statutory reason why we can't do it differently. I think instead of saying what was funded, what wasn't funded, actually one table that says, this is the fiscal year. The item was requested, the recommendation in that fiscal year by this committee, right?
Yeah.
And what the outcome was, because 3 years ago, this committee may have, highly recommended something, right? For some reason. And for whatever reasons, it gets moved and gets, kind of gets kicked down the road,
Mhm.
right? But legitimately, department heads need, and everybody needs to understand, somebody asked for this, it's like, and I don't mean to pick on the police department, but, every year they're looking for a new vehicle, right? And I know in some prior years, they haven't gotten it for various reasons, but the fact that they had the ask in there, they should get credit for having the ask in there, and then what was the outcome? Because really looking at this from, okay, this was or this wasn't, and what was approved or not approved, right? And whether it's a contractual obligation, like certain things are, that needs to be included. What's missing here from is a 1 or 2 sentence why the committee chose to, what was the rationale and the thought process? Because things change with different people on the
Yeah.
committee, and just understanding the history of it. Because if you don't go back and look at all the meetings and go through all, you don't know. And that may be too much work. I'm just putting it out there as, because when I first looked at this, I'm going, okay, that wasn't funded. This went in front. This was recommended. Well, what did we do in FY 25 and 24 and 23?
Right.
You know, are things showing up every year that we're just ignoring that we need to figure out why, and if there's another method of dealing with it,
Mhm.
possibly. That's my only comment.
Okay. I'll just comment that in terms of making it one table, I can play around with it and I can bring it to the next meeting or the meeting after that. That's perfectly fine. Because I'm not, I don't know how other people think, but I'm not necessarily dead set on this layout. It can be changed or whatever's best. So I can look at that and I can send out another copy. Again, this is just to start us off with our report and if we want to add something to it, so that is not the issue. The only thing I would say about the 1 or 2 sentence about what the committee did last year, is that we would be writing that and we are not the committee from last year. So every time there's a new committee, or new year, I would just caution that we can't speak for that prior one because they've already gone from past. Now, there's some of us, me and Danielle that were there last year, but we can't necessarily vote as a group right now and say one way or the other how things work. What I will say is that last year we did add a section, committee comments about some of our thoughts on different things as the process went on. That was a part of it. Doesn't necessarily cover everything. That's something that we can talk about more when we get to the actual report done for this year. But every report, and this is just my opinion, if anybody wants to speak up, stands on its own from that committee. It speaks for that committee, and then the next committee can look at that. But to go backwards and say, we're going to say, look at it from that perspective.
All valid comments. Yeah.
Because every committee has a slightly different makeup and a slightly different perspective on what's going to happen, and the dynamics of the fiscal year are very different. So it could be this same group next year and we could look at what we did and say that didn't make any sense. And that's the reality of the situation.
Full agreement with everything you said. I understand your rationale for not wanting to put anything there for prior years. That's fine. But going forward, I think it's important for folks to understand. And it's more than just for us. It's for anybody who wants to look at the document going, well, why did they it's like and I'm not looking for an answer. All right. That's not what I'm doing. It's the recommended but not funded for the FY 26 budget, includes a couple of things on here that I have no idea. I have no understanding of why. To me, they would be obvious that they would need to be funded and somehow need to be funded for some things, right? And because there's nothing here that explains why it wasn't, maybe something wasn't communicated, maybe something,
So
maybe something changed.
what I'm hearing, and I don't mean to interrupt you,
No.
Liz, what I'm hearing is that you're questioning, you don't understand why something was funded versus not funded.
Right.
So, and this committee doesn't get,
I'm not saying that we get to decide. I'm just saying that the rationale behind putting like ranking, right, 1 through 9. Well, why was number 1? Why was the first one for FY 26? And I'm not looking for you to answer the question. Why was a utility pickup above a safety issue? And it's those kinds of things that to me, I'm looking at this and I look at some of these things and it's like the NRSD, I think, was removed from, and it may have been after this was created, but the request was removed. And, so it's things like it's almost like you've got a status and then where are we today?
Well,
Right. And what I'm trying to say is we're not telling a story. We're giving stats, we're giving data points, but we're not telling the full story as to how we got to this point. Recommendations, and I'm not looking for you to justify anything that was done in the past. That's not what I'm doing. I'm just saying, moving forward, I think it's important to understand what this committee is recommending and why it's recommending it. And that's all. And it may be too much work. It may be too much of an ask and, or it may not be appropriate, but that's where I'm coming from is, like, you know, even looking at this from just a taxpayer perspective, I'm kind of like, doesn't make sense. And I have to go and figure out why. And that's the reason for my ask. And moving forward, I fully get the past is the past. But
I think everything that you're saying, when we get to developing the final end part of the report, the committee's general comments can explain that. There can be a separate paragraph to explain why we chose what we did at that point.
That works.
We filed that. That's why they were, that's part of why I had proposed to put general comments last year, because there were some evident fiscal issue, financial issues that were coming up as we were trying to work with it. And there were some comments that definitely needed to be made last year that had not been communicated strongly enough. So that's something when we go, like I said, when we start talking on 11/19 and at our December meeting, that's when we can start sort of working on that. So we can start compiling that as a group. Are there any other comments? I can bring this back probably for the 11. Let's see. Probably not next week. I would say probably the 11/5 meeting. I can probably pull a different version of this together where it's just one table and we can start pulling it. One table for what was recommended versus what was the outcome of it. I can do that. If everybody, if there's general consensus from the committee on that, I would still recommend keeping the town meeting actions up top, because if anybody wants to go back and see what did the town actually do with those, I think that's a good historical resource.
Yep.
Okay.
Oh, to see if they pass, if they.
And what article they are, so that people can
Yeah.
go back and say, okay, wait, what's going on here?
Yeah, I mean, because,
The town meeting
yes,
decided.
yes, a
Yeah.
lot of those things and will come off the
Yeah.
wish list because they've been approved.
Yeah.
Through other funding sources. Mostly, they're usually always under another funding sources.
All right. So if we have consensus on that, I will bring that back on the 11/5 meeting.
Yep.
View with an update. All right, so with that being said, discussion about the definition of capital items. So after our last meeting and after getting some questions from a few departments, I figured I would at least bring it forward to see what our expectations are. Because I think that's a lot of some of the questions that we're going with, even with the presentation today, is what are our expectations when people come in front of us, and what are we expecting to receive? And I know that one of the big things that got included with the memorandum that went out last month was about, software assets, which is one of the questions that I got. So I guess what I'm looking for, not necessarily, I had put discussion and possible action, but it could just be general consensus of the committee, is, in terms of the two definitions, the one from the statutory, duties and authority under the bylaws, and then the one from the excerpt from the financial management policy. I think it's very clear if, you're trying to purchase a completely new software program, and we talked about this, there's the cost to install, there's a, I'll call it the cost to implement it. Then you've got your initial service fee, what your service, not service fees, but your license fee, what that's going to look like, and if there's any service fees that you need to do and what that's going to go out. There's other categories and other expenses on top of that, but generally speaking, cost to install, cost to maintain, and if there's a licensing fee moving forward. With that, I'm trying to think where I was going with that. Obviously, if anything, combination of that exceeds over $10,000 and it's the first year to install something like that, it should come in front of this committee so that we know. What I'm asking for is, do we believe that this should also apply to existing software licenses? If something is over $10,000 and a license, and most of our licenses for software, let's just say, are 1 year, maybe 1 or 2 years. Is that something that should come in front of this committee? Or is that something that we understand as being an operating cost for that individual department?
here are my 2 cents. When they go out to want to purchase new software.
Okay.
Okay, I'll start there. Purchase new software.
Yeah.
And all those things that you stated that come into the costs are very valid. But part of that is they also need to show the ongoing licensing costs for the out years. So whether or not, you know, if you want to use the software, you got to pay the license on it, right? I'm neutral on where it is, but when it first comes in to be purchased, that needs to be included
Okay.
in it. As far as, you know, if the money for the licenses, I don't, it is, but it isn't a capital. It's sort of one of those things like what definition do we want to use for it?
Right.
And I think that's what you're asking. And
That's kind of what I'm asking, if we are interpreting
Brand
a
new.
year-to-year license as being something that we need to consider within capital, or
A brand new.
if, right, because if you cancel a license on, let's just say, any of the financial software, then you're gonna have something come in front of you, because they're gonna have to go out and research and get quotations, and it's easily going to be over $10,000, because you're not just gonna have the cost for the license, you're going to have the cost for conversion, you're gonna have the cost to install, and you're probably gonna have additional service fees that first year in order to get through. And then you're gonna have the yearly licensing. So that's sort of the distinction that I was wanted to bring up, is the initial package of how you start and what the out years are projected for with it in terms of licensing costs, because licensing is every year you need to pay for that. Usually some are different agreements, but most licensing, to my knowledge, is usually on a year-to-year basis. Because there's other services, even if they don't have a service fee with it, you know, most of the time you see within licensing, you know, that it's, you know, for your customer service, because you're gonna call in if you need help with any of that.
so, I think it's reasonable that in the first year that they want to go do that you have to include that so you can project it out. So it can be included someplace in the budget appropriately. The second thing, though, is situations where right now we have multiple large software systems. I'll just put it that way. I have no idea if they talk to each other or not. You know, data, you know, basically transferring data back and forth. If they don't, and there's a desire to do that, that's going to be more than $10,000, and that does need to come here.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, the departments that have those softwares, I can tell you, for instance, one of them, it definitely does not communicate out.
But I'm just, because there's data, there's
Right.
there's data that sits, let's say in DPW, right? The impression I have over the software package that they purchased a couple of years ago, right? It has maintenance in it. It has some asset information in it. Is that asset information basically transferring over to the financials, you know, sitting with the accountant or not? And, you know, should it? And the improvements on just efficiency improvements, you know, everybody has their little area, and I get it. And I understand why, because it's best suited for that particular department's needs. But there are times when the data is sitting in one system that really needs to be available for a different system. And so you don't get people double keying things and everything else. So something like that, I would expect to be a capital expense that would come in front of this committee at more, because those things are going to be more than $10,000.
Right, and that would be a one, right. So I guess what I'm hearing is that initial installation and purchasing of software and its projection, that should come in front of us with a proper projection. Current software that we've already implemented years ago that we're just paying a licensing fee on is more of an operational expense. It doesn't need to come through here. If anyone's going to do anything special, like a one-time major upgrade, which that would be a one, you know, let's say, actually, there are examples of this in the in prior capital reports, but if you needed to do a major update, you know, you're going from version like 1.8 to 2.0, and it's going to be a $50,000 convert, you know, upgrade and its useful life is, well, so-and-so vendor won't do it for another 10 years, then that should be a capital expense, and this committee has seen that in the past before when that has happened. So that would be my expectation, and if they're going to do a major one-time project, like you have a new state requirement and you have to include this, and it's gonna cost the software company $15,000 to add that piece in, then it should come in front of this committee. If it's under $10,000, then it wouldn't, because it
Mhm.
doesn't meet that threshold, because it's a one-time capital thing. Ideally for the lifetime of the software, but at a minimum for a couple of years before the state changes its laws. So,
Yeah.
okay,
Okay, did that clarify things, and was
Yeah.
that a reasonable,
interpretation.
yeah,
Yeah, no, I mean, that's the interpretation that I was going with.
Okay.
Danielle, do you
Mhm.
think the same way? Candace?
Yes, fine.
Okay, all right, so I think just by consensus, the way that things have been going and the way that that's been communicated out, I think is consistent in the way that the departments know that they're supposed to come in with that. So if anybody doesn't, it really isn't an excuse for that, because again, I've seen it in the prior spreadsheets, when there've been a major software upgrade, people have come in. And if they're doing a major one-time project like that, they should be, if it's over 10,000. The department should know that, and that's already. So, all right, so I just wanted to clarify that, and if we're okay with that discussion. And moving right along to the capital schedule, so it has come to my attention when I was looking at this again, for the committee's awareness, I will not be available on Wednesday. On the 3rd, I have to, go to an annual meeting that night. I am an officer, so I need to go and do that. So we do need to have a December meeting before we hit when we need to submit. Does anyone have an issue if we were to meet on the 1st or on the 2nd, and is there a preference on the two dates?
what are the days of the week are those two?
The first is a Monday, the second is a Tuesday.
The first would be better
First
for,
would be your preference.
be my preference.
Okay. Candace, what's your preference?
I don't have one.
You don't have preference? Danielle,
I'll be here,
you'll be, it's true.
whatever day.
You will be here.
It's a long place to get here.
Okay, I will double check, with James. He wasn't able to attend today. I'll double check what his preferences are, but it sounds like we would like to do Monday. If we did do Monday, we would have to go earlier at 4 p.m. because I know on that 1st, there is a scheduled agricultural commission meeting, I believe at 6. So we would have to watch that.
Or maybe not.
Or selectmen, potentially a selectmen's,
Selectmen's
meeting, but they just
meeting.
changed that too. I'd have to
Yeah.
watch that.
We don't know yet.
I have to look at why I set that to 4, but it should be at 4 because I know there's a conflict on that. So the 4 p.m. would need to happen. All right. Does anyone have a problem with that? No? Okay. It doesn't have to have a motion as long as we're in consensus with that. Okay. All right. So like I said, I'll reach out to James, but more likely than not, it'll be December 1st. If it changes, I will communicate out to everybody here. And I will make sure that that's reflected on the meeting calendar. So with that, we are going to committee member comments. Does anybody have any comments for this evening?
No. I,
Okay, Danielle?
No.
No, Candace?
No.
No. The only comments that I have are that next week, some of the community services departments have requested to go to a different presentation date. So that's either going to happen, they're either going to present on the 5th or right before we start developing our recommendations on the 19th. So you will see that change. Other than that, everybody has started everyone's been submitting in their items, and those will be sent out accordingly when we get there. So other than that, I thought it was a good meeting, and with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
so moved.
A second.
I'll second it.
Okay. Liz made the motion, Candace seconded it. There is no debate on the motion to adjourn. How do you vote, Liz?
Yes.